and then I will come back and join you, and at the end. So let's see, to get this thing to properly. Okay, so we got the pop-out chat going, and we are online on YouTube. So good evening, everyone, and welcome. This is Nick Lawrence's organization over the summer this summer, and I think Raquel is going to run the show. But Nick, you're the MC, and I'm going to join you again at the end of the evening.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Right. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us yet again in this installment of Skip's larger series, Tarot as a Roadmap for Life. And over the summer, we've been doing a mini series, which we've been calling loosely Tarot Permutations, something to that effect, where we are considering the relationships that exist between various cards. So whether that be 2 cards, 3 cards, 4, or perhaps even more, any way that we can establish a relationship between the cards and then examine that relationship as part of a larger whole that is the tarot deck, we've been doing so. So this evening, Raquel Fonseca is going to give a presentation on the cards of her choosing. And without further ado, we will turn it over to her.
Thank you, Nick. I am doing something quite different today. I'm trying to correlate 4 cards, the Wheel of Fortune, the Hanged Man, the Death, and the Devil, because I believe they are correlated. So I am going to go through a little bit of symbolical meanings for those cards, but also I'm going to bring a true story of a person that believes, that went through all of those cards, so we can correlate what happens in someone's life to the meaning of the cards. So I don't know, Nick, can you put my presentation on? Because I'm not the co-host,
Yeah.
I think. Thank you.
Let's see here.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
You can already go to the next page,
Okay.
please. I am co-host now. So,
You are?
yeah.
You want to try to pull it up on your own?
Maybe. I don't know.
I just made you co-host,
Thank you,
Raquel,
Skip.
also. So we have a lot of co-hosts tonight. So, but since you're in charge, it's your prerogative.
Yeah. What would you like to do, Raquel? I can stop the share and you can pull it up, or we can just continue like this.
Maybe we can just continue like this.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll tell you when to stop so we can discuss something, and when we can go on.
Sounds good.
Just going to organize my desktop a little bit. Okay. Okay, so first of all, I wanted just to talk about the method that I use for this presentation. I use the dialectical method. In previous presentations, the Hegelian dialectical method was presented to us as a formula of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. But I would like to add the materialistic perspective of the dialectical method, which is to incorporate a layer of reality alongside the theory. This perspective is just to confront the theory or the ideas of something with reality, in order to see if the theory remains the same or what changes the reality might bring to the theory. So to accomplish that goal, at the end of each card, there will be a little story of how those card meanings are perceived by someone in their actual reality. You can skip now. So about the selection of the cards. For today's presentation, I thought of bringing, again, the Wheel of Fortune and its meanings, alongside 3 other cards that I understand in my practice as a tarot consultant that are closely together as one big transformation in someone's life. So we are still grasping the meanings of change and transformation. We talk a lot about symbols and perspectives, but we often lack of concrete examples of how these meanings can occur in one's life. So this is just an attempt to bring something from an actual reality of someone so we can think about these cards. So it's not about having a final answer about them, but it's just one example out of many. You can skip now.
Okay.
So the imagery that I'm going to use in this presentation, all of them are from the Marseille deck, but it's from the renewed version of Hodorovsky, because he remade the Marseille deck with the actual colors of his entire research about that deck. That's why the colors are extremely meaningful in this particular deck. You can skip now.
Okay.
So the Wheel of Fortune, to begin with. Rachel Pollack says, the Wheel of Fortune is a vision given to us by the unconscious, coming from the idea that the hermit turned his back to the external world, and unconscious gave him a vision of the wheel. The wheel of life only becomes visible when we step away from it. When we are too close to the events, we don't really recognize what is going on. Hodorovsky says that the wheel is closing a chapter of our lives and waiting for the future. And I think that that idea of waiting for the future is really important, because it is about change, but it's not there yet. You know, it's kind of like unconsciously we are aware that something's coming. This is why also I believe that the Hanged Man, the Death card, and the Devil card can all be perceived as inside of the Wheel of Fortune as one card and not separate aspects. So there is an overall understanding that the wheel is a constant and perpetuated change, always a beginning and an end in the same form. You can go to the next one. Hodorovsky points out that the center of the wheel may be a fixed point inside the turmoil. It can be seen as an essence, a core, something that is called to be awakened, as an inside treasure. Hodorovsky always has a passage on his book that says, if the arcana spoke. So in each card, I'm going to bring a little bit of something of that part of the book. So for the Wheel of Fortune, he says, as the Wheel of Fortune saying something to us, I have realized that I must seek within for the great other, the divine source that the center of my countless revolutions around this axis. I became lost, seeking everything that resembled me. I have enjoyed the pleasure of seeing my reflection in the eyes of the others, as if in an infinite mirror, until that day when, with an irrepressible force, I took action in the world and tried to change it, only to realize all I could do was begin to transform it. So this is an experience of alleged woman for entertainment purposes only, so we don't get maybe sued because of it. So the story goes a little bit like this. A woman, 29 years old, living a regular life as a college student, falls in love with a friend. Not a close friend, someone that was her acquaintance. and best friend of a man that she knew was in love with her. They met in a protest back in 2013, and she knew immediately he was special, but never indulged in that feeling because she was trying to figure out who she was after a long and terrible relationship. They grew closer over the years, and even though the feeling was there, it was only when he invaded her dreams that she was no longer able to run away from him. The dreams she had about him were always in a beach at night, and he was a part of a greater picture. The scenario was similar in every dream. She was inside the ocean, a calm sea, with the water just above her knees. She wore an orange dress for summer weather. The man she was in love with was also in the water, close enough so they could see each other clearly. But there were also a bunch of other people that she didn't know. They were all wearing similar outfits, all white, dresses or white shirt and pants, and we were all a part of a ritual. You can skip now.
Okay.
This dream repeated itself in a course of 1 year. At first, the woman thought it was nothing. She did look for esoteric meanings, but didn't acknowledge her feelings. Then the man starting to participate more and more in her life, and the repeated dreams became more frequent. She tried to hit on him to see if he was interested, but she thought he was indifferent towards her, and she gave up. And also because that was going to mess up the entire friendship circle. When she decided to give up on him, then the dreams happened every day in the course of 6 months. So this is the first part of the presentation, and I would like us to just think about a little bit everything that I spoke until now. If you guys have any questions or anything that you want to say.
If I may, it really came to me when you said with the Wheel of Fortune, that something is coming. There's a future aspect and it's unpotentialized. And the Ace of Pentacles came to mind as assets and seeds that are sprouting underground. You feel, but you haven't seen them sprout yet. And then running forward to this last slide, that when she thought he was indifferent, and so she started to avoid outside, it actually became more intense inside, as if the energy inside and outside were both real. But when she ignored the outside, all of that outside poured into her inside, and the frequency of the dream increased. Is what came to me.
I really like that, Jordan, because even the relationship with the Ace of Pentacles, it's kind of reminding me of the Death card in the Marseille deck, because it's a little bit about that, just reaping from the ground some of the seeds. You have to work the ground still, and it does have a correlation to the Ace of Pentacles. I did not thought about that, but that's
a really good point. I hadn't either, actually, with a Death card, but the very prominent, as Colleen Keeper would say, follow the red at the cerebellum, the red at the sacrum, the red in the joints. Those are all little Ace of Pentacles potential action places.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point to then segue to the Death card and connect it back here to the Wheel of Fortune through the Ace of Pentacles.
Yeah, and in Hodorovsky perspective, he does work with all the colors that goes within this deck. And the yellow card, if I am recalling it right, it's about consciousness, but also about wisdom. So it's...
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if you, since we associate you say that yellow is wisdom, what is purple?
I think it's transformation.
Because the purple is wearing, okay. I'm not too familiar, but the way he's using the colors, but I'll share that in my experience with what her story conveys and the Wheel of Fortune is that there's such a thing as called a mind object. So even though it comes in a dream, it's just as much as real as any object out manifested in the real world. It is there and it is real. So and when we do not deal with a persistent mind object that is arising out of the unconscious because she's engaging with the outer world, and that's prompting it to rise to the surface again and again and again, because I believe she hasn't resolved the wheel turn yet. Then it can become more intense. And since he lived at a time when maybe the age of Aquarius, etc., there's an intensity coming on as a new age. She was being prompted from the depth of her unconscious without really realizing it. That is an object. It is an object. It is a mind object. And unless she faces that mind object, goes through it, or shoves it aside, or does something with it, the object continues to be in front of her. And to me, the Wheel of Fortune, and I've used it in dance, and I made it come alive in many different aspects, not just speaking about it. It has to do with time. It is time in the human realm. And other realms, this time doesn't move this way. It's out of time. So by us being part of the human and the earth realm, then we are subject to that objectifying of it in what Raquel is bringing out as the real world, or in real, what its term is real, which is time in human earth awareness as we know it. So,
You mean the will world?
yeah, it's all about time. And time, yeah, and
mind
time.
object.
Yes, it's a mind object. We have wrestled with mind objects like you have no clue. And it can take us a week, and it will persist. Embarrassment or shame, call it what you may. Love and attachment, it is a mind object. And if you're able to one day release a mind object like she has, then she'll really understand that it was a mind object. And
Well, if I track your mind object concept through the card, and I follow the gold and I follow the red, on the wheel, the gold is the divine come to light on the outside ring that comes from the inner red life inside. And over on the left, you have this half human, half goat, horse character, and the gold is on the dress or the tunic. And so there's a persona, a superficial thing has come to light. That's the first part of the dream, is the awareness of this connection. And then as you move around to the one where the whole body of the animal is gold, there is the inner animal, the inner nature, and move then towards the top with a sword, and the gold is in the crown. And then that light, divine light that has come to light, is up in the numinous, in the crown chakra. All three of these are all touching the gold outside, and in some way have a paw or a hand that is touching the life inside on the wheel, so that all three of these mind objects, as you brought up, persona, inner truth, inner nature, and then evolved consciousness, it comes to light at the top, because the one on the top is actually on a pedestal on the wheel. And that that seems
Yeah.
to track Raquel's recount of the dream 1, 2, 3, even as she just put it forth.
But notice the crown has 5 prongs, and 5, like I mentioned, and it is 5 twice. So apparently now the 5 from the Hierophant is rising to a position of status. Twice is now doubled. So
Right.
because it's a 10. So there are a lot of hidden clues involved in
Yeah.
tarot, and that so it's, if we can consider some of the weaving, it's very refined and sophisticated, I have to add, and it's always open for the new that to come in and be part of it. So it's got a 5-pronged crown and is sitting at the top, and this is card number 10, so that's double. So the other 2, okay, it has foregone the superficiality of the one falling, that it's all the yellow is only in the skirts, and has foregone the inherent animal desire that is on the right side, and it has taken those and put it right up here like a birthday cake.
Exactly. And if you notice, the whole wheel is based on 2 bars, 2 supports that are gold in the light on top, and then in the shade or the shadow is the life inside, the red, so that it starts foundationally with the gold and the red, transforms to the circle of the ring that is spinning there above it, supported by it, and then goes into the, after 1, 2, then the 1, 2, 3 of the characters. If I look at the supports as 1, and then the 2 pillars as 2, and then the 3 characters as 3, 4, and 5, there's your Hierophant all connected in one in the wheel.
It's
For me,
particular.
I think at least what I understood you were saying there, Gilda, is that it sounds like this young woman was experiencing something happening outside of herself that was correlated to something that was happening within herself, the mind object thing. And that's,
But it's
I'm
actually
really interested to see how the story of this young woman unfolds, but it seems like, this is only the beginning, and this wheel is kind of foretelling a series of events that we've yet to get to.
But
yeah, I think that Gilda was actually trying to say that it is, the dreams were a complete experience. They were a concrete part of her life, of this young woman's life, I believe. Mm-hmm. Not something that's just occurring inside that we can see outside, but it was separate things that were correlated in a sense, I think.
As an object.
You're saying they really made up
Yeah.
rather one experience instead of it just being like something happening inside of herself that was outpictured and not connected. I see.
But if we think of it as experience, feelings, her desire embedded in the whole Shakespearean drama that's taking here, it is an object. It is actually an object that takes form, and she interrelates with it, like if there was an actual form there. So that's what I was trying to share. And whether all of the other peripherals on the outside and details, it is a mind object. And the psychic works this, and until we realize it's a mind object, and we let it go, then something else can happen. But as long as it's an object, we are caught like in jail by the wheel of fortune of time.
Yeah.
And as Nick brought up, it is a complete experience. And as you went through the dream, all the elements of the card are the capital S sequence of events that occurred. But the whole thing, the whole series of dreams across the year and 6 months are then the process, capital P, process. So in a sense, the object or mind object, as Gilda is bringing up, becomes both and. It's also abstract as well as real. And because it's real to her, it's her life experience. And it's internal, that's fueled by all the external events, it seems.
Yeah, but also I would like to just point out how strange it is to someone to have the exact same dream for 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
It's too much. And I think this is why I think that what Gilda said is so perfect, because it became actually an object for her, because
Right.
she was dreaming so much about it that she could just not run away from it. So I think this is just amazing that Gilda said that, because it's exactly what I think what happened. And also this is a part of the experience. And as someone that went through therapy most of my life, I can always tell, and in regards to this story as well, that the first thing that we see about something is not the actual answer. So just remember what Rachel Pollack said: you have to step away from the wheel. You have to get some perspective from the wheel to understand that change. This is why I also loved what Hodorovsky said, that it's about transformation and about future, but the future is not present yet. So it's just a reminder that all of those cards, the Hanged Man, the Devil, and the Death card, are within the Wheel of Fortune. They're just separate entities, but they are within.
Mhm.
Well, yes,
Actually,
and
Well, with
Gilda's
that, are you ready to
subject
move
is
to more slides?
Well,
What?
if I can just share something about that, because Raquel is saying they're all within. When I did, when I created an actual live ballet, I mean, I wrote it, and in my mind I danced it, but it's not performed. The Wheel of Fortune is a shift in dimension. It is so therefore it does include the future, it includes the past, it includes the present, because it is a moment of shift. And every moment of where there's like a joint, when there's a shift, then it must by nature be able to carry those three things. So
Yeah.
that's why it's very clever to choose all the Devil and all of these cards of, those are more dramatic, the dramatic shifts that point it out. But that's why, I mean, I could explain it really well by the ballet, but I won't. But it is a shift in dimension.
I think I'm gonna continue with the presentation, because there are 3 more cards, and at the end of each one, there's a little piece of the story of the woman. So with the Hanged Man, it often means a stop, reclusiveness, state of accumulation, more internal than material. After the Wheel of Fortune, there is a descendant in the next 10 cards, showing facets of what it's like to do internal work. The cards are more about learning experiences that questions the 10 first major arcana cards. Between the Magician and the Hermit, we barely built our ego, and now it is time to destroy it, to see what we are really made of. Hodorovsky says that the Hanged Man is a fetus inside the High Priestess, an incubated force that needs this stop so we can be born. You can skip now. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah.
It is time to step away from the visions, symbols, and expectations we created during childhood or young adulthood to seek our own essential truth. This restriction or sacrifice aims to oblige us to do some internal work. It is time to look at the lineage we came from and question ourselves if the lineage should continue or change. It implies to some extent that we may be carrying something that gives us grief, heartache, or shame. The hanged man can be seen as a second aspect of the Wheel of Fortune. Thus, we encountered difficulties in the process of becoming who we are. Can go to the next one. In the part of the Arcana, if the Arcana spoke about the hanged man, Hodorovsky says, I am in this position because I wish to be. It is I who cut off the branches. I have freed my hands of the desire to seize, to own, to cling. Without abandoning the world, I have retired from it. With me, you can find the will to enter the state where the will no longer exists, where words, emotions, relations, desires, needs no longer bind you. To detach myself, I have cut all bonds save the one joining me to the consciousness. You can go to the next one. So the next part of the story of this woman goes, a woman, 30-year-old, it's the same woman, by the way, but a woman, 30 years old, was bursting with happiness over her new relationship. The beginning was a rocky start, but after the previous relationship was a bust that started off really good, she figures that this time everything should be a little different. The previous relationship took a lot from her, including lifelong friends, and now she didn't have many left. She was also more discreet about her love life, especially because her new relationship was tearing apart a group of friends. But there were this one friend, a male college professor that she trusted. They weren't speaking to each other very frequently, so when they spoke again, her relationship already had a few months long. She was ecstatic, could not stop talking about this new man that she thought was the one. Her friend listened to her, but couldn't believe what she was saying. Who is this guy? Where did he came from? You never said anything about him. Were some of the arguments of this friend closely followed by the phrase, I can't believe you. Then in the middle of conversation, the friend started to offer random things. If you want, we can travel anywhere you want. Where do you want to go? I know your family's in trouble. Do you need my money? I just bought this new car and I know you just got your license. Do you want this car? The woman knew he was having a jealous crisis, but most of her close friends and family were possessive of her. She was firm and said no to all of those offers and said that he wasn't getting what she was saying. She was finally in love again, and she didn't need anything because in time, everything was going to work out, including our friendship, she thought. After that, her friend never spoke to her again. Everything in college changed. She was prevented from getting school credits she already had. Her grades with a certain teacher, ex-friend's friend, were so low that she thought about dropping out of college. She stayed on the course because this teacher went into internal investigation for other problems that she was causing. Even with this loophole, staying in graduation became increasingly difficult for the woman. So before we get to the death card, in this part of the story, I just wanted to point out how we can go in through to a course of life thinking about how good or how special can be a type of transition and not actually grasp the consequences of everything that comes along with it. Because something good happened in this woman's life, but she was getting bullshit about it from other people, and was starting to get in the way of her own life. But at the same time that the environment was not welcome to this new event of her life, is still, this is an internal process that is important for her to go through. So this is why I think that this part of her story is correlated to the Hanged Man, because it became a standstill in her life of what is going on now. I thought I was doing something good for myself, and this is good for myself, but the environment became hostile. And I think that the idea of becoming a fetus inside of the high priestess of all the people, not the empress, but the high priestess, someone that is almost like virginal, especially in the Mercedes deck, it's important because it's kind of like creating something in introspection, in being introverted and not going an external world. What do you guys think about this?
Well, it's really
I think
interesting too that she's, clearly I don't know this young woman, but as you've detailed her story to us, it's really interesting to me that on the one hand, she's having this recurring dream for 6 months or a year. I can't remember which one you said. And then now all of these things in the external world are also popping up as an obstacle. And it's really interesting just to think about how those two things are kind of moving alongside each other. I think one is really ramping up to the point where she's got to either deal with one or the other, or perhaps both.
That's a brilliant point to me that goes also with Raquel. It's really brilliant when you put her, or put the pendu, the hangman, in as a fetus and the high priestess, because then the next card would be the empress to carry that character to full term to be born. But the pendu, if I translate it, is culturally backward in Hinglish, Hinglish. And what's interesting is when you bring up the brilliant point of the possessiveness of her family, that's the resistance of her being culturally backwards to them in doing what is best for her.
Yeah, and I think that the possessiveness is so correlated to me to the Empress card.
Yes.
And I think that this is precisely why this idea is being gestated in the high priestess and not in some external force, and because at this point something that is being created cannot come to term yet. It cannot be born yet. So
Right.
It also correlates to the idea that the Wheel of Fortune is a future, but it's not here yet.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know French very well at all, but I'm just noticing that the majority of, this word pendu is the majority of the word pendulum. And it's really interesting to just think about how, this pendulum is still swinging. This person is waiting on the other shoe to fall. And with what Gilda said about time and this being kind of a shift as it relates to time, but maybe it's still not even here yet. That seems to meaningfully contribute to the story as well, where it's like there's a huge change coming, things are kind of at a standstill, and you're just waiting on this change to come that's close but not quite here.
Yeah.
So that's
the pendulum, Nick, the pendulum concept is exquisite, because that goes back to Rachel Pollack's you have to step back for perspective. So when you go from le pendu to the pendulum, then you're going, instead of from either or, the family's possessiveness or her culturally backwards doing something for herself, you're pulling back for the perspective of both and those at the same time. And you're seeing, instead of waiting for the foot to drop, you're looking back at right foot, left foot, family and her. So I think you taking the le pendu to pendulum that's a really nice jump that I think really goes back to Rachel Pollack's step back for perspective to see the whole thing.
Yeah, Gilda is showing a pendulum right now. She's like waving a pendulum.
A pendulum is part of my practice. And Vermont is a place where it houses the home of the Association of Dowsers. This is called Dowsing. And I cannot tell you the benefits of it. It's beyond what, because when you correspond with it, it reads the field. So it's a modern tool of it's been used since the Jesuits used to use it, and the Hindus know about it. It's been around all over the place, but it hasn't been quite recognized as if the science doesn't put it out there and tell you, hey, go do this, then. But we've used it in it. So it was interesting that he mentioned that. But I'll say that I have experienced what card number 12 is in my dance. My dance was nothing else other than a performance like Shakespeare, going through all the cards. What happens? What happens is that once you get to the Hermit and you don't know, time shifts and throws you, and you're still naked, because the Hangman here has clothes, but the Hangman in other cards is still wearing a lion cloth, hardly anything, because it's going to go through the whole thing that it just did 1 through 10, but now it has knowledge. Now it has awareness. Before 1 through 10, it was cultivating awareness from the fetus, like you mentioned it was still a newborn. Now it's not a newborn, it's an adult. And it's an adult that knows. And now it's going to be put forth through the whole rigmarole till it gets to card number 20. So now you mentioned that his name is a little difficult for me unless I see it written. Hodorovsky mentioned that here, when you get here, you need to lose grab and grasp and everything. No, that is still there. And now it's going to the test to see if you actually are aware that it is there as a mind object or whatever else, and how are you going to deal with it in order to transform it into by the time you get to card number 20 or 21. So, but now you are aware of it. You have self-awareness. From 1 through 10, you're just going through the motions of 1 through 5, self-development, 5 to 10, other people around and whatever else you need to do. Now you have both. You've been with other people and you've self-developed. So now it's the third thing. What do you do with those two things when you're encountered with the same whole retinue all over again?
Yeah.
I think there's a trickster present here, because he cut off the branches. He cut off the external pieces to grab a hold of. But the unseen is that his hands are doing whatever they're doing, clasped, touching, facing palm forward, palm backwards, behind his back at the belt. So behind his back at the sacral region, the connection of as above, so below. So he took this and made sure that he owned his connections inside first. And then in that sense, I can jump from the Ace of Pentacles to the Ace of Wands, where he is the fire inside that high priestess, the fetus that is going to be born, but it's coming from inside. And if you look, there's no wheel in this card, except there is the rope holding his foot would be a continuous circle up and over and around the foot. So the wheel is what connects him to the horizontal pillar. And then he is connecting to self behind his back at the waist, at the sacral region, the point of instinct physically.
Yeah. I'm loving everyone's input in this card, but I will just talk about the death pretty quickly, because it's not gonna, we're not gonna have enough time if
I just want to say, I mean, we've been following this 10x9 thing, but if you've prepared a presentation that has a lot of stuff that you want to get to, we can certainly go as long as you need to. I mean, from 9 to 9:45 is just for general discussion, so we can completely run over into that if we still have stuff that we need to get
yeah,
to.
I think that there's just a few slides left.
Okay.
Probably 8 slides, but it's going to be the death card and then the devil, and then I'm up. Just
Don't worry.
Yeah,
Don't
a little
worry.
bit faster.
Okay,
And then
yeah,
we can
that's-
talk about it more.
Sounds
And
great.
I also think too, I noticed last week when, for example, I was including the conversation during the presentation, it feels like, Raquel, you could probably go a little longer because we'll be doing follow-up correlation conversation after, but we're doing so much during that it feels like the presentation stopped at an hour kind of thing can go over because we're covering a lot of this ground during rather than after.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be mindful of the Wheel of Fortune. Time keeps turning.
Where's
Okay,
Pat
just-
Jack? Turn that wheel.
I'm going to just go on just a little bit longer about the death card. So I'm going to go on with Hodorovsky tendency of not naming the death card. So he calls it the arcana with no name. So the arcana with no name comes after the emptiness of the Hanged Man. Hodorovsky says that this card represents a radical purification of the past, a revolution that lies in the depths of ourselves, where we can't produce words. Another deep layer of the wheel, because back then we were realizing something big was going to happen, but couldn't pinpoint what. It comes with a sense of lost, but not lost of life. Is the loss that comes when we have to clean a part of our lives and ourselves. There is a similarity in posture between Arcana 13 and the Fool. One is movement and liberation. The other is work, ripping from the ground pieces that we have to see again in order to create a new form. The past may come again, but in different formats and not for us to relive it. It is a process of elimination of something that identifies us, even if that something is not something that we wanted to be a part of us to begin with. There is a sense of stripping the ego, but all the nuances. So in Hodorovsky's book, in the part If the Arcana Spoke, the death says, those who incorporate me become powerful minds. Those who deny me, seeking vainly to escape, lose the delights of the ephemeral. Although they are in being, they do not know how to be. While trapped in anguish, they do not know how to live. Thanks to me, everything turns into dust and collapses. But do not think that this is a tragedy. I make destruction a process of extreme splendor. We can go through the next one, Nick. So again, with the woman, 33 years old now. She was 30 in the previous one. She was 29 at the first one, and now she's 33. She was working at a job that should be close to what she hoped her career could be. But a lot of things were off. She realized that even though she changed a lot in the course of the years, some relationship patterns were repeating themselves. People lying to her, trying to manipulate her into being something she was not. Unfortunately, as far as jobs goes, she never saw herself as independent. Based on how others started off their career paths in the same field, she tried to follow their footsteps, relying on others to get some starting position. The entanglements of the schemes came faster now, and over a few months, she knew she could not stay there for long. But she had a job to do, and she kept going as long as she could. We can go to the next one because there's a little part. She could tell us all about her insecurities, how she always felt trapped in a character that wasn't really what she wanted to play, how all those loved ones who passed away were so vivid in her mind that it was like they were all alive. She could tell us all about abuses, sexual, physical, and psychological, and how she still feels her persecutors lingering in the shadows. And although this is about all of this, it's not only about this. It's a different type of being lost when there is nothing really going on now to justify feeling lost. Something was coming, she could feel it, but she didn't have any words or format of what that change was. She kept working at her regular job, 9 to 5, trying to stay afloat, doing something she didn't believe in anymore. There was a sense of unfairness. She was, in parts, what was expected of her, but it was never enough. She thought that people wanted something of her that she was not able to give. It was always more than that persona, more than her brains, body, or loyalty, and more than her love. But she was never able to tell what they wanted because she never knew what she had that's so special in the first place. If you guys permit, I will go to the devil now and then finish off my presentation. What do you guys think?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, so the devil card. The final and decisive layer of the wheel comes with the devil. To me, this is the final layer because it is where the shit gets real. Sometimes life events can get us to a place where looking to our own responsibilities and actions becomes hard. We can become victims of the events and never leaving the place of lack, where things happen in our lives and we have no control of. This card is also about being too much in control. There can be a bad place that we live in because we've grown used to it, and that is better than trying to live in any other place. The devil is about being tempted. There is an urge of doing something, of creating, of living. You can go to the next one, Nick.
Okay.
It carries the ideas of Lucifer, the angel of light that fell from heavens. There is a need of going back to the origin. At the same time, we are considered as unfit for holiness. The temptation of losing ourselves from our paths is, weirdly, the same that puts us in that path in the first place. The passion of the lovers brought us to this journey, and we may lose ourselves in the chains that we grown to love. In the Hodorovsky's book, in the part The Arcana Spoke, the devil says, I am Lucifer, the light bearer. My magnificent gift to humanity is absolute absence of morality. Nothing restricts me. I transgress every law. I burn the sacred books and constitutions. No religion can contain me. I destroy all theories and cause all dogmas to explode. We can go to the final part of the woman's experience. We can go to the next one, Nick. So at this point, the woman is done. She doesn't even know what the hell happened that brought her here. Nothing makes sense anymore. Is sense even a word that has actual practical meaning? She can only look what happened and what she lost over those years. But everything started with a dream. Was all of this because of a love? No, but nonetheless, passion was the starting point. Did she lose her love? No. Even though life is a mess and people suck, her heart kept growing. So what is the meaning of this little telling? You can go to the final one, Nick. In the middle of the night, inside the ocean, the woman was surrounded by people. Everyone wore white, a symbol of purity, except for her. The man that she fell in love with stood there with recognition of who she was. Everything that appears in a dream is a part of ourselves. So when she looked at the man in the dream, she was not looking at the actual person that she loves. She was looking at a part of herself, also in recognition of what she was becoming, of who she was becoming. And what did she lost over those years? Absolutely nothing. That is the final answer of the devil for this woman. So that is it, the presentation, guys. Yay.
All right. Wonderful.
That's just Raquel, that's riveting, because then right in the end, you come together with all of these things, that the alleged truth, but then it's not based in experience, so it's meaningless. And what her experience is what's meaningful. And it reminds me of Mark Twain, who would say that, well, of course, truth is stranger than fiction. Fiction has to make sense. And something I've often said is to people, that makes too much sense to be worth a damn. And they went, what do you mean? What do you mean? You know, I can't take that to the office. And it's that because everything is resolved, that's not living, that's polished. And because it's so polished, it's devoid of life experience, in which case it's then meaningless. You may be able to take it to the bank, kind of, but there's money or currency, but there's no value. And so you really brought the experiential home with her story that was basically the primary connective tissue with all four of these cards that she literally lived through, as you started out when you said. And it's interesting to me in the death card that there are 13 vertebrae, and the sacral region red is connected through 13 processes, the 13 cards up to that spine at the cervical, the neck, and then the joints. And so there's all this living potential there, but the whole thing is dead except for the places where it connects to itself. And I think your whole presentation wonderfully connected to itself.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will share that. That's wonderful, Jordan, that unless it is connected to the self, it's really a constant daily death.
Yeah,
So,
no value.
yes, so all these cards portray a kind of death. I think in some way that's why Raquel kind of put them together.
Mm-hmm.
But unless there's a connection to the inner development of which is invisible, because we already know where the outer visible world goes, how that transforms, then there's no integral reality to connect, to say yes, that connects to why I am alive.
Mhm.
So being alive is a little death every day. And because there's always transformation.
Mhm.
And at the end, the devil is not the end. By the time you get to the devil here, you've gone through so much that, you know, you either get it and move on and release, or you are stuck in a sort of hell realm. So all these cards, in my estimation, portray, except the Wheel of Fortune, which is about time, portray a certain hell realm. And you either remain in the hell realm, or you create a movement out of that, which moves you forward in the spiral of creation, of co-creation. And therefore, you're no longer obsessed with a mind object, because the mind and the psyche is just as real as the outer world, concrete, objective reality. So these cards in some way allow us to see that inwardly is just as real as outwardly. And it's not like which is more real. It's not about that. It's a both and.
And you know, your wheel planted the seed of process in the hanged man, who then planted the seed of process back into the high priestess. And then death planted the seed of the idea of down to ashes, and so that can then resurrect in the devil card, the next card, the tower. It will all come down. And like Gilda said, you know, you can get it and move on. It all comes down. There go your expectations, except then the star comes next, which is, you know, Arcane 17 and like Andre Breton. And it's the card of eternal hope. And then that's everything started anew, which is that seed in the high priestess, eternal hope, now birthed out through the empress into the star.
Yeah, when I created this presentation, what I was thinking about was also, I think that in this woman's story, especially in the devil card, Nick, can you go to the and the part in the death card? Yeah, the next one.
Okay.
Actually. In this part of her story, we can see that a lot of different shit went on in her life that's not really related to the dreams or the relationship that she was in, or the troubles that she got from her friends. And the thing I believe that within this transformation, and precisely why it's called transformation and not a change, is because she could not change the outcome results of other people did. She could not change their actions. And there's a point in our lives that because I also believe that when people go to the tarot, they are kind of doing some sort of internal work. They are doing some sort of shadow work, and they are in some sense or level troubled people that are seeking for a type of answer. It's not, all put together people are just sunshine and rainbows and just, hey, I want to play with the tarot. It's usually the opposite thing, like people then went through tons of crap in life and then go to the esoteric things of life just to bring some meaning to everything that's going on. And I believe that the tarot is a tool that helps us see who we really are in spite of everything that happened to us. And I believe this is the pinpoint part, special part of her story, because she could wrap herself in those personas of victimization, of just being a person that, you know, stuff happens to her and she could not do anything about it, because it also talks a little bit about other people. But this was always about herself. And she trying to figure out who she was in the mix of everything that was happening. This is why this part of this story, even though it's not directly correlated to the dream she had at first, it is in a way a consequence of it, because everything started with just she falling in love with someone, and that just brought her those extreme changes, events that transformed her and who she really was. But she could always run away from that. She could always just be this trapped person that could not be herself or do what she really wanted to do.
Right, right.
I have a few comments I'd really like to make. Number one, I just want to say I thoroughly appreciate telling a real life story through the medium of the tarot, because it brings it down to earth, and it makes it something that's highly practical and something that matters really to anybody who cares to pick up a deck and learn about the cards themselves. Secondly, I guess before I make any comment, I'm kind of curious what you make of the ending of the story, and I'm kind of having a hard time figuring out. It felt to me like it was going in one direction, and I kind of had my finger on the pulse of the story, and then the ending was something very different from what I guess expected. So I guess before I make any comment along those lines, I'm just curious. Do you see this kind of devil sequence of the story? Are you saying that this idea of nothing was lost, is that kind of the resolution?
A little bit, yeah, but nothing was lost. But she
or the resolve,
kind of like, yeah, but she's just closer to be who she really is.
Uh-huh.
That is the point of that transformation.
Okay, I see. I gotcha. Well then, okay, I think my comment stands then. It was really interesting to me, some of the wording in this slide here. And I was contemplating whether or not I should say this, but after hearing this line, it seems to play to the same point. You say, she realized that even though she changed a lot in the course of the years, some relationship patterns were repeating themselves. And I was just thinking, it's a very curious thing that in this card, there are hands, which are cut off from the body, and feet, which are cut off from the body. And also, I don't know if this contributes to any of the meaning of the card in any meaningful way, but it's kind of funny. I think this might just be a flub on the behalf of the artist, but this bottom hand has just 3 main fingers and a thumb, which is kind of funny. I don't know if there's any meaning to that or not, but anyways, the point that I was going to make is I've always thought about this card as being like, okay, feet, what do you do with your feet? You stand on things. Okay, those are like your standpoints. And what do you do with your hands? Or well, you grasp things, or it's like that which you hold dear. And it's like your standpoints and that which you hold dear have just been severed completely. And it's really interesting to me, because I'm thinking about, okay, what would somebody be doing to keep perpetuating self-defeating patterns in their life? And it kind of seems like, all that you hold dear, whether it be expectations of your family or cultural expectations or what have you, all of those things, it seems like in this young woman's story, are the things that needed to be severed, and she needed to cut ties with several of those things. And so I just thought that was interesting. I was not sure if I should add that detail with my own thought about these hands and feet, but then once we got to this point where you said patterns were repeating themselves. It just seemed like it fit in with that part of the story.
Nick, I resonate with that, and I resonate especially. I think the missing pinky is just foreshortened, probably curled down behind the hand, but that does call attention to the hands and the feet, and the two heads at the bottom, the female on the left and the male on the right, which would have two hands and 2 feet. There's only one living foot cut off in the underworld there, or on the grasses, the dark plain, but there are 3 hands. So you're like, well, there's a foot missing and there's a hand missing.
That's so strange. I didn't even notice that. In other cards, I'm just so used to, like, when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking of the cards that I use in my head more than even looking at this one. And the one that I have, it's 2 feet and 2 hands, but that's so strange. I hadn't noticed that.
Right, because in the original, it's like this with 1 hand and 1 foot and 3 hands, except look at the holistic piece. The other living foot is on the on the death character, and the other living hand is on the death character. And then you have that watery connection hand that goes down the spine, and to then the tunic, call it death boxers. I mean, as it were. But so you have all the hands and the feet, but 2 of them are still connected. So this death piece is amputating all of those connections that are superficial or expected, or originally the family getting possessive. You amputate that and you have to shut them down, because you have your primary connection at the handle of that staff at the bottom, where you're grasping to turn it, whereas the top is more of a support and connection then to the spine. So it's interesting with all the hands and the feet. They're all present, but they're not all present amputated. There's 1 foot connected and 1 hand connected. And I find that to be pretty important for the single-minded connection to yourself. And what's interesting is it's the feminine, it looks like the feminine left foot and the masculine right hand that are on the death character. If I'm interpreting the way the posture is standing correctly. Because the pinkies and the big toe. Yeah, it's the female foot connecting to Gaia, the earth, and the male hand connecting to this tool of implementation, the ground digger, so to speak, or grave digger. But the hands and the feet are we could go up at the hands and the feet a lot, and then all the fire of the golden petals. Is that like Phoenix Rising? I mean, so.
I think that this interpretation of Hodorovsky is interesting, because in the book, he actually maintained, because those hands, they're not exactly like that in the traditional Marseille decks, the antique ones, because one of the severed hands is actually making the same symbol the Hierophant does. One of the hands should be like this always, but Hodorovsky put a complete hand, like open hand. So and also in the imagery of this card, I think that the skeleton is not actually a dead skeleton, as he says, because a dead skeleton will be entirely white. And he says that this color is a color of meat, which is something that brings still life. So the blue spine is actually, the color blue is about spirituality. So it's the base of his body, in the sense of like, this is what is maintaining the body up whole still. And the blue hand is also part of his action. So the action of ripping his past is coming from spirituality also. And I'm sorry, who said?
Oh, I was going to say, with that spirituality piece, could you comment if you know about the white wishbone at the bottom, or fork, and then this flute tool
there's a flute
that's dropped, and those both seem to be like personal relics or artifacts of the previous. Can you speak to those?
I think that the wishbone, I don't remember Hodorovsky saying anything about it in the book, but the flute he does, it's about bringing back a part of life through music or through breath. It's an action of just a creative power, I believe, that comes through something like music, something like flute, you know.
Well, that's interesting there with the flute. I didn't know that. And that makes so much sense in a good value way, not in a makes too much sense in the wrong way. But because it's almost as if you hollowed out a big bone of all the marrow of life, but then the life comes out of it from your breath, your spirituality, to make music through this old tool. So there's a resurrection of the past that is moving, as you would move air through a flute, to move people with the music, by basically hollowing out the marrow. And that's the air cavity now rather than the life cavity.
I like to share here that it seems like on the flute, there's 7 dots. If I'm counting correctly, are they
so.
7? Okay, those are the 7 chakras. And if we're going to think that is a flute, then that means that breath is what makes the flute sing. And
It probably has to.
so
I don't think this negates what you're saying, but since it is a flute, it probably is the 7 notes of the major scale. But
which is the 7 and 7.
But it is also the 7 chakras in the human system. So whether we want to attribute the definition of importance to our concrete flute as being more godly than our inner 7 flutes, that is up for whomever wishes to give that definition.
Actually, I don't think so. I think we're all correct. If we go back to the wheel card.
I haven't finished. Can I finish my talk?
Go ahead.
And I'm observing here that the blue, since he played with color, that the blue color is on the left leg, is on the left hand, and is on the sacrum and up the spine. And it stops before it gets to the head. So that means that the head is not necessarily the center that culminates the whatever needs to come on board. The whole process is done out of the head. So I wanted to comment about that. And because the flowering little things on the black are also blue, and they're darker blue, and the head really has nothing to do with it, but everything below it does.
Well, and in that case right there too, I think you just played right into where all 2 of those, Nick mentioned, Nick, was it the 7 scales or 7 in music?
7 notes in the major scale.
Yeah, 7.
It's a flute. That seems to be the most logical thing. But
well, and so what happens, I think 7 notes in the major scale. We start there in an abstract that's not a human. And then Gilda personified it into the 7 chakras. So I would take the abstract as the minor, the small, and then the 7 chakras is the molar or medium scale. And then you take the 7 planets and you have the music of the 7 spheres as the larger concept. So I think that goes back to the 3 characters Raquel presented there with the wheel, of starting with the abstract, the tunic, the superficial, the 7 notes in the major scale. Okay, that they're just things, mind objects. They're concepts, but they're nothing without someone enacting them. But then the 7 chakras are there as a concept, but they're living just by their nature. and then jump the scale to the big scale of the music of the spheres, the 7 original planets. And I think that all 3 of those work together with the flute at all, actually, here's, pardon the pun, but at all the different octaves, higher octave, middle octave, lower octave. The flute then plays into all those architectural scales, being from scales of music.
Now, we'll just cap what you have just said, which is so wonderfully stated, that human beings can only create what they have inside. Nothing, what they carry, nothing more, nothing less. And you have just, whether is Nicholas' conception of the realization of the abstraction of music and flute, or whether is my conception of 7 chakras, or whether is Jordan's connection to the way that the octaves form in music. It's only a reflection or a projection, or the reflection of what we carry inside. We are the ultimate sophisticated machine created by nature through thousands and thousands of years. And to belittle that, jumping on the mind object that, oh, the flute is it, or God is it, or my chakras, it's to belittle the potential that integrates and unifies the great, amazing thing that has evolved and is called human beings.
Right. And I think that's the point I was trying to make, is that it is all 3, and we don't need to pin the tail on the donkey to decide on one. And I feel like that flute, actually, I always love it when a detail it feels like the flute kind of brought your whole presentation and wrapped it up in this tiny little hidden molecule that ended up when you started with the wheel, with the 3 characters. And then we have these 3 scales, small, medium, large, with the flute of the abstract of, as you know, and Nick said, the notes in the major scale, and then the 7 chakras and the spheres.
I'd like to say something too.
Yeah, go, Marilyn.
I'm very taken by the head of the figure, if you can go back to it.
Sure, 1 second.
And we kind of glossed over it, and I'd like to know if people have thoughts or projections onto what that head means, because it's so, if you look at the faces or the heads that are being stepped on or down below, they're kind of realistic. And the one above it is so not realistic. I just wonder if anybody can put a meaning to it.
I just want to complicate matters a little bit more and say that also with the devil card, obviously faces play a huge role. I mean, there's the face on the devil, on the 2 characters below, but there's also a face on the belly and 2 eyes on the knees. So if we can also throw that in the pot, that might yield some interesting points.
Well, the face in the belly to the red sacral connection, the face in the knees to the red sacral knee. I mean, what's interesting, Marilyn, I'm glad you brought up the face, because I've always thought that this death character that has flesh tones, so it's not fully dead, it's part of it has decayed or has moved to spirit, spirituality. But what's always jumped at me is the black nose, like it's this complete bird kind of thing, because birds really don't have an olfactory sense and the smelling sense. They sense differently, because that's how they can eat carrion, dead flesh. The stink and the stench doesn't bother them. And it's as if the nose on this character is necrosis. It's died, like frostbitten or not functional anymore. The face is, and also the face is so abstract. That, Marilyn, that's a great point, because everything else is realistic.
Hodorovsky said that in his book, that the face of the skeleton is not an actual face, and is on purpose, because even though the skeleton reminds him of something related to flesh, of something related to life, this is why the skeleton is not white. Even though it reminds something that is living, the face cannot be whole. He says it's kind of like a mask within a crescent moon. So it's not supposed to be a full human face, because for one, it's supposed to be scary. According to him, it's supposed to bring some sort of fear inside of us. And second, it's the idea that we are not done, in the sense of like, we ourselves are this skeleton, this living type of skeleton, but the face is still forming some sort of shape. But before we can form our own face, in a sense, we have to like rip out and sew the faces of the people that came before us, like our parents, our families. This is why the Hanged Man also talks about lineage, about family. Where do we came from, literally? So we
Right.
have to know those faces to realize that we are not those faces as well. So it's a reminder of our past, but also a reminder that this past is not actually us.
That's a great point, because then even the masculine and feminine below, with the concept of lineage, this head has shed its male and female personas, all of them from the past. And so
Yeah.
its death mask is almost a birthday suit, but that's not, but that hasn't formed yet. So it's gonna, this at this point, it's the transformation, but it is not what it fully is yet. So it's like an advance of the phoenix, of the star coming out of the tower, basically.
Yeah,
We really liked what Raquel mentioned about that the lineage. The lineage is the patterns that we have been stamped since we were born, because we're born not knowing, and we are stamped by our parents, lineage, and so on. And later in life, we still don't know if we, the soul, who are we? What did we come without that stamping on? Why are we here? Who are we? What are we to do? So she very clearly stated that. And when you look at the death card, the red is in the joints. It's in the joint. It's in the joint, in the hand, in the elbow, in the knee, in the sacrum, and in the neck. And it stops. There's no more joining something. So the death card, in my estimation, is very difficult to do. And it's a stepping stone to clear, wake up, show up, grow up, and the whole thing. To get rid of the patterns that were stamped on us through lineage. And we work on this, and we have a mentor who has worked on this forevermore. Is extremely difficult, and it's usually called karma. Is a name of it, karma, which you cannot avoid, but you can move aside. Why can't you avoid it? Because it was stamped onto you when you were young. So it's there. So unless you get rid of it and kill it, then you cannot get to the kernel of the beauty of the being that is there, new, facing this life without the stamps or the tails. The tail, it's like the Ouroboros. I used to tell them, I carry this long tail. It's heavy. I don't want it. It's not even mine. So this is the perfect card to cut the tails. It's very difficult to do.
Yeah.
And it's not a head thing. The head has been programmed. It's not a head thing. You got to embody it.
Yeah, and I think this is why in this part I chose to put the part of this woman's story where she started off saying that she was kind of like trapped in characters that she was role playing, like she was in a play. Although we can perceive those characters as part of her persona, that was not fully what she was, in a sense of like, yes, she was being someone and something that people wanted her to be, but she was more than that. And she has to realize how to be more than that and still kind of like maintaining this connection to this society that will always kind of like bring her something that she still has to perform, in a sense of like she has to be a specific persona in this society, but still be fully who she really is. Because and in the idea of looking at your own lineage, even though we might not have the best relationship with our families, if we do our internal work and then we go and look and see what our parents did in their lives, we will realize that most of what we are doing is a retelling story of things that already happened to our parents. Of course, that it is different in some sense because we are all different, we have our own lives, but still it is some kind of pattern that is repeating. This is why also she came to this acknowledge that there's some sort of relationship pattern that was repeating itself. So it was not the people anymore. It was not this person or that person that was causing her trouble. She was she was falling still at the same types of relationships. So she will always face with the same relationship cycles. So how to break that without a person seeing themselves as an entire victim, as like, oh my God, this happens to me all the time, and actually step in a place of action. Yeah, this happens to me, but what can I do in order to change it? This is why at the beginning, it was all about transformation and not change. Because when we talk about change, we talk also about changing environments and changing maybe other people and maybe even changing relationships, like, live in another city and go have a relationship with people that are totally different than the previous relationships. But that is not what all of this is about transforming yourself. This is why it has to come from a place within.
Well, and I think I like that you said that, especially in tandem with Gilda's point of the snake's tail looks so long, cut it off. And what's interesting is it makes a distinction between humans and animals. For example, a frog begins as a tadpole, and that which moves it is its tail. Its instinct is actually externalized in its tail. And as it transforms, not changes, it ingests its tail. The tail starts to move inside. So that unconscious instinct starts to grow, transform into the frog, and then push out these conscious legs. And then it consciously moves from the legs. Well, the snake its whole locomotion is its underworld instinct. But then with people, we kind of have to amputate things or shed skins like a snake, but we don't have a tail. I mean, we have a tailbone, but what's interesting is our instinct is kind of born within to be developed over a lifetime, rather than watching literally, oh, well, it's now a frog, so it's very instinctive. You see a person, they've never had a tail, typically, maybe at the carnival, but on random places. But it's interesting that we're born as humans to have to discover something we never saw, which is instinct, intuition, unconscious, which then with Gilda's cut the tail of the snake, where we can ingest the tail of the snake, except we're not. And so I like that when Gilda bringing that up, it brings up a really healthy contradiction that I think is worthy of some decent discussion. I don't know tonight, but of the cutting off the tail would be a human thing to do because it weighs too much. I'm dragging it along. But for the snake, that's taking away its whole being almost. The head just flopping around is not going to do anything. But if we personify the snake that way, I think it brings up part of the evident intuition of a tadpole versus the evident intuition. It's not evident in us except through, as you said, our actions. What is she doing to even cause these things to repeat? I mean, there may be some silence she has at some point that someone else says, and she doesn't cut them off. And so they just keep going, and it keeps happening because she allows it, but maybe by omission that in a blind spot she doesn't see as a thought.
Well, and to follow on that, when Raquel said, do you want to be retelling? Raquel mentioned that, well, we're kind of retelling it from the past in some new way. And my being things, are we just continuing to retell, or are we co-creating, evolving? And there is a big difference between the two. And it is extremely difficult to stop retelling and get on to co-creating, evolving the new. It doesn't mean that you came out of the void, but it means that you're no longer retelling. You are co-creating, evolving the new.
Yeah. Can we go to the devil card, Nick, so we can see all the little faces?
I'm curious, Marilyn, did you have any thoughts about the head of the death card or the faces here?
No, I when we looked at the death card and I looked at it again, I could see it as a mask. And it reminded me when the Egyptian emperors or the pharaohs would die, they'd make the head mask for them. And a lot of times death masks are made. And if we can see it that way, if I can see it that way, it's kind of lending towards maybe there's a future. Maybe this is for now, but then this will be going off and there'll be a real face underneath. But as far as the devil, I have no idea what this is. This is really, really odd for me to figure out what's going on here.
Well, thank you for adding that. I mean, that's with
yeah,
a lot of words, that gets right to it.
Thank you, Marilyn, because to me, this card has kind of a pachinko ball chaos of composition. When you get these antlers on the big blue devil that seems to be feminine, and then you get 3 nipples on the left side, and then are those breast lines like masculine pecs, or are they gills in the chest? And then there's 3, and then a partial form nipple on the right with a gill or a peck bottom there. And they're more seraphim, no genitalia, more angelic, that don't have genitals. But then 1, 2, 3 toes on the right, and a thumb opposing foot toe, and then 4 toes and 1 opposing thumb toe, and then move up to the face and the belly, and then 2 breasts, golden dots. And then I go back to this, where'd these antlers come from? I mean, is that the ram? But those are more like deer or stag. And there's so many things here that aren't symmetrical that I find just make a huge roadmap for a long form discussion of what is going on in this card. And it's almost like everything is going on in this card. And like Raquel said, but everything started with the dream.
Because I believe that the devil card is a reinterpretation of the lovers.
Yes.
Because as Nick had just pointed out in one of his presentations, so it is about the same type of passion, the same source of energy, but in some theatrical way. Because Hodorovsky says that there's actually four different faces within the body of the main devil. So this is the faces of his head. The breast area is supposed to be another face, and then there's the belly, and there's the knees.
Right, they have eyes. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
The knees have eyes.
Yeah, and they're supposed to be in a way of seeing everything. So it's something that you cannot no longer run away from, because in a sense, your eyes are perceiving everything that you should be seeing. But the main face of the devil, it's kind of ambiguous in a sense of it's supposed to also create some sort of fear, but it's supposed to also be kind of like a laughingstock in a way. It's something that's
very
actually hilarious, not really that much of a serious face.
It's like over theatrical. It's like a carny. It's like there's too much makeup even for the stage kind of thing.
Yeah, and the wand that he's holding in his hand has a fire in it that is frozen. It's not moving. It's not a fire that is actually creative in a sense, because the primal force is within the bodies of the devil. This is why also have horns. Hodorovsky says that the horns of the devils means that it's a sign of passion, and that is the creative energy that's driven this card. And also the feet of the little devils that are in the black sand, he says, they're supposed to be roots.
I say they look like roots.
Yeah, they're supposed to be like tree roots, and seen as something that is like grasping you into something, like making you stay in a sort of place or some sort of type of pattern or thought or something.
You just clarified something for me. That wand with the frozen fire. In my devil card in my deck, the male holds back a wand to the devil character that has crystals as a torch. And I always thought, well, what is frozen fire? Frozen fire would be crystals because the energy is inside. But I stopped there and went, okay, that's a neat concept. Okay, use it. But then you saying the frozen fire here, I went, oh, cool. I didn't come up with it. I mean, I came up with it on influence, but there's more of an archetypal idea going on there that I was aware to see and feel and act on it. And then I see here, I went, oh, look at the historical friend, Frozen Fire. He did that too. And then that to me is one of the cool things about the creative agency, where then you mentioned the eyes and the knees, you can't run away from it anymore. And that means you've turned and engaged.
And also about having eyes in each scale of a possible creation, perhaps, because eyes on the face, creation of the mind, eyes in the breast area, creation of the heart, eyes in the belly, creation of some sort of need, of something, hunger also. But the eyes of the knees, creation that comes within movement.
Yes.
So,
yeah. Action. Yeah, it's very much.
Okay, I'll share that. the eyes and the belly is the will, if it's near the belly button. And if it's lower, it's the hara, which is the source of power, of the power that moves, agency, like that. Now, we're very curious. There's eyes everywhere, and they're all centered except the eyes in the head. The eyes in the head are looking like cross-eyed right into the nose. Now, anyone who knows meditation and transcendental meditation will know that when the eyes actually, there's a exercise that you watch the tip of your nose, because when the eyes focus upon each other, then you see the universe. So I thought I might throw that one in. So because
That's
all the
awesome, yeah.
all the other eyes are balanced except the ones right up here.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And Hodorovsky says that he was this character is trying to look within himself. This is why he's crossed eye. And also this is why, because he's trying to look at himself, he's not, he doesn't care if he's looking a little bit foolish.
No, because that is an exercise. When the eyes look at each other, then it transcends and it can see the universe because it's looking at itself.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Gilda, because in that face and the belly, the eyes are then connected to the solar plexus, span down to the tongue is reaching down to the tantian. The mouth would be the navel, the belly button, but then the hara, tantian, or 1 point, depending on which language you want to use, is 2 acu-inches below your navel, and that is that's the origin, the source. And so the tongue, blue, even darker blue than the rest of it, is this deep unconscious, literally tasting the source. The tongue reaching down to the tip of the tongue, touching the tantian or the hara, the 1 point there.
Yeah.
But if
So
you
it's an
follow,
ultimate-
if you follow the red, there's only 3 areas where the red is actually a point. And that is way below, where the 2 ropes of the little guys meet below, at the end of the penis in the devil, and at the tongue. That's the only place they are concentrated. The rest, they're spread out or somewhere else or trying to become. Here, they're centered. Bump, bump, bump. 1, 2, 3, ready to go.
Yeah. I do think it kind of interesting that the object at the bottom kind of looks like a 1950s diner radio. This very deco looking mod communication device thing, that the orb that she's standing on.
The only thing I'm puzzled about is the black at the bottom, which is like rooting, right? Where the roots, Raquel mentioned there was like roots. And then the little guys, they're rooting out of their heads. They've got black antlers, but that doesn't, but the big devil does not have black antlers.
Well,
So
that is
what
interesting.
what happened to source? What happened to the rooting?
That's a really good point, Gilda, because I think they're actually like rosemary or plants coming out of their head, but then it ossifies into the bones of the antler above, and that gets the living flute we got to, where the life was there, the marrow was hollowed out, and then made to make music. So they're growing nature, but then the big character actually has bone antlers, and but they're both in the same natural form, because it looks like rosemary or lavender. Actually, it looks like rosemary growing out of their head.
But they're no longer black, so somehow it's not carrying source. It's not carrying the root. It
But
somehow transformed the root into something else.
the thing is, in Hodorovsky perspective, creating roots in that black soil is actually a negative thing. This is why the main devil has its own roots in something yellow and not in the black soil. He is within some sort of pedestal that is yellow. So his roots, his spiritual roots, that's the blue color symbolizes for him, are trying to grasp knowledge, trying to grasp the yellow part. This is why also his antlers are blue, are spiritual, and not black as the other little two devils. He actually says, because that black ground also happens in the death card, Hodorovsky says that it's about the alchemical process of nigredo. I don't know how it's called in English, but nigredo.
Yeah,
Yes, Negredo.
It's called Negredo. Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to
Thank
say
God.
that too, that they're sourcing that potent, dense darkness from below, but they're filtering it through that device that he then stands on to make that into the gold.
Yeah, but I believe that in the alchemical process of Negredo, there's something that is highly concentrated, that's highly like closed off inside oneself, that you have to slowly work through, not disintegrate, but actually create another form. So this is important because the little devils are still rooted in the Negredo,
Right.
but the main devil is rooted within knowledge and wisdom, and something that is very different from the other two little devils.
And if you
Well-
look at the black, there's so little of it, but that means, and it's just as powerful as any of the other colors compositionally, which means it's incredibly dense, like you just said. It's just that one band across there that, 4 or 5 inches, so to speak, depending on how big these characters actually would be. There's not much there, but it's like a star material. It's so dense. Like you said, you have to unpack it a little bit of a time because it's so pure that it would be toxic.
And in some ways, like a lot of these cards, they portray all kinds of processes like alchemical disintegration, burning, transforming, turning this into that and the other thing. And at the end, one feeds the other. So it is a constant feeding process that allows it to become. So being is always in the process of becoming, whichever way you want to look at it, and how much you want to dismantle or whichever checkerboard you want to utilize, is being is always feeding becoming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting too, the orange tails, and then the orange tether. So in a sense, they're still constrained by the amygdala, the instinct, the base things. That which binds them is just pure instinct. Whereas you get the orange above, it's in the headdress, it's in the wings, it's been articulated, it's in the areolas on the nipples. I mean, so you get all these things that have articulated, have the being that has come into being in a form, rather than just being this thing that's binding and reactionary. It's responsive above.
Well, it seems that the yellow is transformed into gold, and his way of portraying gold is that color.
Right,
I
that
don't
orange,
know.
more of an Aztec gold,
Yeah.
right, darker
What-
gold.
What happened to Nick?
What happened to me?
He reached enlightenment.
Nick. Oh, there he is. Okay.
I've been here the whole time, but yeah, I'm still alive.
Alive and kicking.
Yeah.
Right.
But notice those red points. There's only a point right at the bottom at the end of the penis and at the tongue, where the eyes are looking into there. There's no more point, red point. Everything else has a shape, or is over here, or is an arc at the belly, or a halo on the little devils. But the point, which is a point of concentration, is
Right.
at the source, at the penis, which is symbolizes creation, where creation sprouts, and at the tongue, sound. I think has to do with sound. Language and sound. Without it, we wouldn't be, where we are.
And also
What were
Claire
you
Goose,
saying about the head earlier, though?
Pardon? Yeah, the tongue. The tongue is red.
Yeah.
it's in the tongue would also be Claire Gustins, which is clarity of taste. Most sommeliers, people who gourmands, the sense of taste is so developed. So there's the ability, in a sense, to taste life there. And you also mentioned the voice and music, and in that sense, that
the mouth is one of the portals of
right.
the beginning at the end. The mouth is an actually opening, and so is the sacrum and the penis and the vagina, whatever. Those are the two open. They actually are opened.
Right. And then the snake
Really, so.
almost biting the tongue there too, the snake biting his tail. That's where everything comes together. All the senses can emanate to and through the mouth.
Well, I will share that one of the Yukeshwar, he's one of the gurus of Yogananda, who was one of the Indians who brought yoga to the West in the 1920s. He has a very interesting book that is called The Holy something, Yukeshwar. And he was told he had to write a book. He didn't really want to. It's just a tiny little pamphlet. And he describes the nature of human being, and that we're actually, the way our body is designed, we're vegetarians, because, from the mouth into the end of where it comes in and goes out, the way the intestines and everything moves is related to those who eat plants, not carnivorous beings.
Then I guess I'm not human.
We have evolved to be able to survive in all kinds of ways. But that is a very interesting book if anyone wants to read it. The Holy Science, maybe, by Yukeshwar.
Yep.
Very small book.
Cool.
Thank you, Raquel. Have you finished?
Yes.
Okay.
What an excellent presentation tonight.
Thanks everyone for.
Yeah, that was just wicked cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing.
I think you brought myth alive in a different way.
And
Thank you guys
so
for your
why do we
patience.
do this on Carl Jung Depth Psychology reading group? It's because everything is about transformation. And one of Dr. Jung's key books was called in German Symbols of Transformation. But in English, it was originally called Psychology of the Unconscious. But
But it had something to do with libido, did it not?
yeah, it was Symbols of Transformation of the Libido. Yeah. But basically, we're talking about psychic energy. So there's a famous book by Edith, what's her name? Anyway, it's called Psychic Energy, written in 1949. I urge you to find it. What is it called? Who remembers?
Edith, not Wharton.
No, it's here. I have it.
Is it Hamilton?
No, it's Esther Harding. Esther Harding. There's the book.
Mr. Harding. Well, what's interesting is, Raquel, your presentation, there was a lot of talk that would imply libido. I mean, we're talking about the instinct, the tadpole's tail, absorption, transformation, base desires versus higher octave desires. And that really ran a through line that would align with Jung's symbols of transformation and the transformation of the libido.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so anyway, the point about that is all of this is about psychic energy,
Right.
and releasing it and finding
That's right.
finding what gets you going.
The bridge, the psychic
bridge.
energy that bridges
Right.
the reality that Raquel is trying to bring forth here as real time. But
Mhm.
psychic energy is also real time. How do you bridge the two and become one?
Yeah, it's often has something to do with the anima.
Ding, we have a winner.
in the book.
And for me, it would be the animus, wouldn't that?
Yeah.
It's both, and
Yes,
because
that's right.
I manifest the anima, but the anima is also in there somewhere, in those patterns that Raquel brought. Are you retelling the story? I'm retelling my mother's story. Can I share something? My grandmother, my mother, and myself have the exact same moon in Gemini. So when we look at that, we say, oh my God, something has not been released. So it keeps coming in until it is done. When it is done, it will no longer be the next one having moon in Gemini. And we stopped it because we have no children. So we put a stop to the moon in Gemini.
Well, that's quite an astrological maiden mother crumb.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah, we constellated it. A full moon child, we constellated. We said it stops here.
You didn't sacrifice them, did you? You just-
We said, but what is that about? What is Gemini moon about? Blah blah blah. Writing the whole thing. Women didn't write that. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, my grandmother's like a blah, 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 blah. My mother. I mean, I can just follow the whole thread. So that's a very interesting kind of way of using the mapping of tarot and astrology.
Nick,
All right,
there's
guys.
a
Well,
question.
I'm going to adjourn here. So I just want to say thank you very much, Raquel. This was wonderful as always.
Thank you,
And
Nick.
thank you to all of you for hanging out and talking. And we'll be looking
There was,
forward
you
Gilbert
may need to go,
Grayl's-
but Skip mentioned there was a question, I think, on the YouTube.
Yeah, it's for you, Nick, which is can't find the deck with the artist you mentioned. Do I need that artist?
I did not mention an artist. I think Justin Case mentioned Tarot de Marseille painted by Felipe Camonbi
Mhm.
as
That is
instructed
the
by
one.
Hodorovsky. So
Yeah, that is the one that I showed in my presentation. Just in case is right.
yeah, so Neil, if you just file back through the chat just to 951, you should have all the information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plug into Google
And
find
this is
that.
the book that I use the most. This is the Brazilian edition of The Way of Tarot of Hodorovsky. So
Mhm.
it's a beautiful edition.
Yeah, it is a beautiful
But there
edition.
is an
It's
American.
great for everybody that reads Portuguese.
Yeah.
It's not the same in English. It's not
Oh,
the
yeah,
same.
sure it
It
is.
is,
Sure
it
it is.
is.
Yes.
It's just a translation.
Yeah,
But no,
Hodorovsky.
that's a beautiful book. And what I love is that he works with tarot voice, not talking about what the card would say. He turns into the first person theatrically, plays the character, and speaks the card. And that to me is one of the most wonderful ways to help people learn, is to literally to have a conversation with a card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not rote memory. There are no rules. There's only resonance or BS. And you don't have to pick up on any of the stuff. It's not right or wrong. It's like a conversation. So, I mean, that's some good stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of beautiful stuff in this book. Hodorovsky really did a great job.
So,
Yeah.
Nick, I want to thank you very much for taking the helm over the summer, and I really appreciate it because I was actually getting less and less energetic. But I do have one thing to share with you today, which is I have a new bracelet, and it came from a friend who is a cancer survivor, and I am now officially a cancer survivor. So
Yes.
this is my survivor bracelet.
Oh, that's awesome, Skip.
Talk about
Pardon?
a trial and a rite and a passage.
Yeah.
That's some big stuff.
Yeah, still recovering from it, but it.
Well, we never saw you knocked down, so that's great.
Well, you actually,
You're a real Marine. You're
yeah,
a Marine.
except for the Wednesday of last week, I walked into the cancer center, and they have a temporary rug down there that you're supposed to be able to dry your feet if it's raining, but it wasn't raining, so I actually tripped over the edge of it, and I can actually show you this sort of, because I actually tripped into the bell that you ring and banged my head on the wall, and I actually in this short little video I'll show you.
Oh my God.
Logos in first. Bing.
Right.
It's like Skip being powerful poltergeist there.
Logos.
Right.
Bing. Logos is knocking. Bing.
Right. So here's me ringing the bell. I doubt if you're going to be able to hear this, but anyway, I'm ringing the bell, and then there's a pan around to three of the young women who saved my life, and the one in the middle, whose name is Laura, she's the sergeant major of the place, and I had fallen right into her and banged my head on the wall, and so what I said is, "This is for you," and then I rang the bell, and and here are the three of the women, and the four. Well, there was a man also, Daryl, but he wasn't there for this occasion. But anyway,
Well, Skip, I just want to say it's been my pleasure to do this, and of course, we're all incredibly happy that you've made it through this. I assume that you're out of the woods now. So,
well, the doctor says I'm out of the woods for 10 years, 99% sure, 15 years, 96% sure, and after that, I'll probably be non-compos mentis. So
after that, leave it to the devil.
Yeah, the devil.
Well, I love Skip that bell was exactly the opposite of someone going through buds, ringing the bell and seals. It's actually not. You were like out the other end. The celebrating. That's it. That's done. I'm in.
hey, I just want to say one more time, because I do really need to go now. So
yeah, Nick, I hope you win your chess game tonight.
I don't know if I'm going to be playing chess
I
tonight,
hope you
eating
lose
dinner, but
at the stage for a more developed relationship later.
okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. All right,
Peace.
you
Good
all
night,
Here.
Nick.
have a good one.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much for your help.
Thank you.
We had a question for Raquel that kept suddenly it came up. Since you did the research on Hodorovsky, he wrote a book about a cat tarot. Do you know anything about the cat tarot?
No, I really don't. He wrote
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
I'm gonna look.
He has a cat tarot. How it's like from the perspective of the cat, how the cat interprets this whole affair.
Yeah, I did not know. I know there's a lot of cat tarots out there, but I did not know that he wrote a book about
and
it.
he has a book and he designed a tarot.
So every
Wow.
card just says no.
No, I don't know. I happened.
Judging you.
Yeah,
I-
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Raquel.
I happened to
had a
come
cat for
upon
20
it.
years, and yeah.
And that, whoa, Karen, let's go search what he did. He used the cat as a symbol to tell the whole story.
I'm
Mhm.
gonna look for it.
You know?
I
Yeah,
didn't
me
know.
too. Because
That'd
that's
be great.
because I love
Mhm.
cats, but also Jodorowsky would. I wonder if he's tongue in cheek or both that and serious, because he's got a sense of humor like nobody's business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was very clever. We can share a few anecdotes for his little
I-
compilation.
I was just asked about the books that I gave to 9 people. I gave books to 9 people, and so I had to put them on the chat here.
Books.
Yeah, I gave On Softer Ground by Sherry Lovelaar, and it's just a wonderful book. I can't read it without weeping. And the other book is Random Gifts of Art by Tim Holmes and Garrett Garrels. And Tim's book is Sherry's book is really special. So for each of the 8 people that I gave it to, I didn't give the doctor that. I gave him a drawing instead. But the 8 people I gave it to, I identified a specific poem for each one, all different. And Tim's book, Random Gifts of Art, is very good read, and it's meant to be passed around. So the idea is you get the book, you read it, you put your name at the beginning, and there's a potential list of all the people, and every book has a unique identifier. And so the idea is after you read it, you write to Tim and tell your story about reading it. And they've given out 1,340 of these books now around the world, and it's a wonderfully written book. It was written by Garrett. The prose is by Garrett, and he tells the story that Tim gave him 3 drawings. Tim has thousands of drawings hanging around his house. When he sent me the portrait, he also sent me the 30 drawings that he did while preparing the portrait. And so he's literally got thousands of drawings lying around, and he gave Garrett 3 of the nicer ones, of course, and said, just give these away and ask nothing in return. And so the book is about Garrett's experience in trying to give art away to random strangers. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. It's sad. It's all kinds of things. It's a wonderful book.
We were contemplating that reality, since we have a lot of art, and we and we also carry other people's art. As I want to be one's curator, and realize that it all has to do with space, whether there is space for to become, to be hung, to be appreciated. If there is no space in the life of the person, in his home, in his immediate environment, then the art just cannot thrive. So space for to be is the
and you can make space
of the
for great art by giving it to people who don't have great art.
But if those people don't have the space to keep it, then you are throwing pearls away.
Well,
So
what's interesting,
space is the key. If
But
they
yeah.
have space to receive it,
If they
then
if they don't
it's
make
great.
space for it, then shame on them. Yeah.
Right. It's interesting to me with at the cabin. I didn't recollect. I walked in and there must be 20 pieces of my art here from between 1993 and 2006.
Mhm.
And you walk in though, you're like, wow, that's really, oh, I did that. I mean, you engage the art just long enough as if it's somebody else's, and you start to resonate, and then you go, oh, it's mine. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's really kind of cool to walk around. I mean, the one even behind me, little mandalas and poetry art. I totally forgot whole series of work because I gave it away as birthday presents one year.
Yeah.
Like hundreds of paintings disappear, and then I come here and 20 of them are here. So,
Well, it's a wonderful thing to do with grandchildren, and now grandchildren and children. I've been doing that for a long time. When I divorced my first wife, we spent all day arm wrestling in the judge's chambers on what art I would get to keep and what art she would get to keep. It literally took all day. And then we went in at the end of the day, having agreed on exactly what it would be. And the judge says, okay, you're divorced, right? And then, so I called up Claire and said, well, okay, I'm going to come over and pick up the stuff that I negotiated for. And she says, no, you can't have it. I'm not going to give it to you. Then I said to myself, oh my God, the joy of collecting art is the joy for me. And I really wanted my daughters to be raised with fine art around the house. Right. And so I said, okay, you keep it.
So you see, you made space. So it's not only that the daughter or the grandchild has space to display it. It is the collective that also mirrors and acknowledges the beauty and the refinement of what that represents.
Well,
and when that is not there, then no matter what, even if you give it away, it cannot be held by that person because there is no space in their survival to keep that art.
Well, that's right. But, it made room for me to get involved with new artists and other artists.
I was going to say, in that moment, you had a whole new vault, basically, of space to now get art to fill.
Yeah. And so that's, that's why Tim Holmes and I have such a close relationship because he lived the life I wished I could. And so he's like my doppelganger.
You're a Buddhist. You're a Buddhist, right? So next time.
Yeah.
Next time around.
Who lives the life that I want to live is Raquel's cat going, oh, I really love this fur on the coat. I think that's the whole focus right now.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is warm. I'll stay.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, folks. Well, I'm gonna call this to an end and go back to my recovery. And those of you who join us on Wednesdays for the advanced reading group, I will see you then.
Thank you so much
for those on the YouTube channel. Pardon?
Thank you so much for the space and the time of each and every one of you. We appreciate it very much.
Yes, and I appreciate.
Thank you for coming.
I appreciate having you, and this space is still going to be available, but we're going to
change a little bit
on. Yeah, we're going to change it a little bit. We're now informed by the tarot, and we can go on to other psychological issues.
I can find the new treasures though. So Jordan wanted to continue with the little treasures. So we hope that after I make the presentation next time that there's still some more little treasures.
Oh, yeah. And I will say later this week, I've planned some time to make sure. I may need to up my Zoom Pro account one more notch up, just for gig storage, and then see what I need to do to link up my YouTube live stream from it, just so I could basically, I may ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure. No
without much
worries.
urgency, but
Yeah.
just so as I get going to transfer and then talk with everyone about what day we want to use, a Wednesday evening or something, see what date, so we won't lose anyone still interested on the
Yeah.
panelists, hopefully the YouTube audience. But I can offer my channel, so later this week, whether it's money or time or whatever, I just have to go in and go, okay, what do I need and how big does it need to be? Okay, take this money and blah blah blah, so we can
Yeah,
set
well, honestly, Jordan, you don't have to spend too much on Zoom. You may be able to just do it on meetings to begin with, unless you're having a big audience, right? Because I got the big webinar pass, which cost me a bunch of money every month, because on our Wisdom Path colloquium, we sometimes get a lot of people watching. We had nearly 500 people online when Murray Stein spoke, and we're going to have some more interesting, very interesting ones coming up in the fall.
Well, definitely. My primary piece, I think, is, I was looking at this a month ago anyway for my own, is that I think my current subscription plan will handle 500 people, but the amount of memory is about 2.4 videos. So I think I just need to
don't use the memory on Zoom. Save it. Well, first of all, anything that you do in a YouTube session is going to be saved by Zoom or YouTube automatically. But also what I do, I do record everything I do, but I just keep it on a hard drive.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So I need to put a little dam and divert it to just change the memories.
But I do have a 2 terabyte computer.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I may switch to my MacBook Pro, because I've got the 512 gigs of RAM on top of the 512 gigs of memory, of storage.
Right. Well, and that's enough if you're fastidious enough to move it off onto a hard drive.
Yeah, and I have one still with the movers that I think it's a FireWire drive that it's not a terabyte because it's too old to be a terabyte, but it's
well, you can get a 4 terabyte new one for
like this
$100.
big. Yeah, there's nothing anymore. So I probably just get it.
And then just do your storage there. I never store things on Zoom except by mistake.
Right. Well, no, and that makes sense, because I can just stick that on my Friday first half of the day, invoicing and file management. I'll just stick that as another admin task, so that the fastidious, at least once a week, I'm keeping everything clean.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
where do you store your things?
Then on that.
Then I have it's a small thing, so I mean, I
It's
can
an
have
external hard drive, right?
yeah, it's an external hard drive, and you can just have a chest with your keepsakes, right?
Right.
Yeah.
These are my keepsakes that I'm.
So that's good. It's your own closet, and it's not a cloud.
Yeah, but I mean, I've done a lot of things over my career, and I think that there's a lot of material there that people could write about. And I've said, and I say again, that if people wanted to pick up any part of what I've done and publish it, fine. I'm not going to debate a copyright. So I'll even make it available to you if you're interested.
Well, but Jungians also, and especially Marie-Louise von Franz and so on, they were very adamant in that, yes, you could use someone else's material, but you at least had to have the courtesy of mentioning their name.
Of course.
Oh,
Yes. Yep. Of course you do. And you know, and that, you know, Jung and she did a lot of that. I mean,
Yes, they did. They were very adamant at doing that.
right. And Chiron Publications is now publishing Marie-Louise von Franz's collected works, which is 28 volumes. It's bigger
Yeah.
than Jung's.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
so
Yeah.
the thing that mine would be interesting about, I think, is that for the last decade, especially since I've been doing the Jung work, I have been keeping all of my letters, and so there are some very interesting series of letters in there. All
Nice.
kinds on all kinds.
You
of
mean
topics.
email letters?
Yeah, they're all emails, and so I've stored them, you know, by year and by month.
No, that's
Yeah.
that's excellent. That's an
Yeah.
excellent. Raquel,
Yeah.
my archivist. You know, I mean,
And
if you do it as you go along, it doesn't take any time. It's
Yeah.
people who try to wait for a big pile. I mean, you just have to incrementally do it, because then they just grow instead
Yeah.
of making. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, in my lawsuit, over a 9-year period, I filed 4,000 pages, and it's all in the public record, and there's a lot of good stuff in there, especially for lawyers, but and lots of good emails about that.
I laugh because my
That's great.
I have
That's
one
good for lawyers.
Yeah,
one document that is 99 pages long and uses fewer words than anything I've ever done. And I copped the movie technique, and I faxed opposing counsel a 99-page black piece of paper. And so they were late because they didn't realize all their cartridges ran out. And it bought me 2 hours. And so it looked like I was early.
That's a clever thing.
that's good. Well, yeah, that's
And I stole it from a movie. I don't remember which one. It may have been The Firm or something, but I just remember going, oh, I'm going to print out one black sheet, print 99, and just kept, you know, on 3 different counsel faxes, opposing counsel. And I get a call. Is this from you? I'm like, what does the number at the top say? It's all black. We can't tell. I said, well, what's your caller ID? It erased itself. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
The devil card.
I guess I have to plead the fifth. I'll see you in the mediation chamber.
Yeah, well, there's what is especially good, though, I think, is the 5 appeals to the Court of Appeals in Maryland.
That you did, right?
And the appeal to the Supreme Court, because for the U.S. Supreme Court, you have to follow very, very strict guidelines, and you basically have to write a book. And so mine is something like 252 pages long.
And you took it to the Supreme Court and you still didn't win?
Right.
oh my God.
I still never got a day in court. Literally, I never got a day in court. They never allowed my case to be heard.
That is really something. That's history.
That is history. Yeah, because, you know, when I started this,
That every young person in the United States ought to be familiar with.
yeah, and you know, how I got sued for foreclosure by my bank, which didn't own the debt, and and I fought it for 9 years, and they changed the plaintiff 4 different times, literally. And finally, they put the original plaintiff back in, and the original plaintiff didn't own the debt. So they gave my house to somebody that didn't own my debt.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
That makes Shakespeare look pale.
Yep. Yep. So anyway, I don't get, but here, but you know.
And
the
do you
book-
know who got that house?
No, I don't want to know. I haven't been back over there since we moved out. But anyway,
That you're
you know,
still here
I
telling.
wrote a book how I was sued for foreclosure and stayed in my house for 9 years.
Yeah, that is really, I mean, I thought I had it, but that is, on par.
Well, I kept a roof over my wife's and my head
Right.
for
Mm.
9 years, and because at the time I was paying, until I stopped paying, I was paying $72,000 a year for my mortgages, for my 2 mortgages. So
You didn't pay anything for 9 years.
right. So that's 72,000 times 9 years that I didn't. So I basically took my equity out of the house and then gave it to them.
But in principle,
Make them-
in principle, it was not acknowledged.
Yeah.
In
Well,
value, then you tell yourself, well, I've got something. But in principle and heart and in truth,
no,
Yeah,
in
but
truth, in
truth,
truth,
pay a
the
pound of
truth
lead.
is that the court gave my house to somebody who didn't have any right to it.
Right.
right.
Okay, that's the truth.
Right.
And
So the holders of truth and righteousness gave the house to someone who had no right to it. Now, what
Well,
does that mean? Is that paradox,
that's
or
not-
is that like
That would
like
be
a- is
Gilda,
that
that
that's a mind FUCK?
Gilda, that would be a justice system. We don't have that. We have a legal system. They're not the keepers. They're not keepers of righteousness. Let me tell
That's right.
well, there's a difference between the true rule of law and what they want the people to believe. So
Yes.
when I began my suit, the first attorney who was defending said, "Well, Mr. Conover, no one ever fights us." And I said, "Well, I'm fighting you."
you. 2 words. Get
and,
ready.
it turned out that because they were filing so much false information, their law firm got disbanded formally by the courts, and he lost his license to practice law.
Mhm.
Not because of what I was doing, but because there
Right.
were others that were doing similar things that
Well, that's almost like
showed them up.
movie
Poetic
Term.
justice.
Well,
Yeah,
you're
that's like-
you're validating. I took it out of, and actually, there's the person who wrote it. I don't know. It's somewhere in my stored in my computer. That a woman said that by the 1950s or 40s or something, the American government had perfected fooling the American public. It had perfected how to fool completely.
Well,
the
sometimes
American public.
that perfection comes home to roost. We're seeing that in Afghanistan right now,
Mhm.
and absolutely the exact same thing happened at the end of the Vietnam War.
Exactly. So are we constantly keep repeating this stuff? I mean, me and it's like, oh, when you get a little enlightenment, a little it's called omni.
How about experience?
Yeah, experience will also send you on that path. After a while, the thing is that you can see it everywhere.
I actually know, I know both the last man out of Vietnam, literally the last man, Major James Keane, who was the last man to get on the last helicopter out of the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. And so he was literally the last man to touch Vietnam at the end of the Vietnam War, Major James Keane. And I actually served with him for about 7 months when I was in Vietnam. And then I know the man that 6 weeks after the fall of Saigon arranged to save the Hmong tribe. And
From a ranger to save him from whom? You've already left, right?
well, they had been helping the Americans, and we had already left, and he was mad, and so he went and made a deal with Anna Chenault, who was at the time the president of China Airlines. She was the wife of Claire Chenault of Flying Tigers fame. But after World War II, they had two airlines. One was Flying Tigers and the other was China Airlines, the flag carrier of Taiwan. And so my friend borrowed two 707s from Anna Chenault so that they were carrying, China Airlines livery. And they landed without permission at Tan Son Airport about some weeks after the fall of Saigon. And the Vietnamese were so befuddled, they went down to the end of the runway and opened the doors, and 500 Hmong ran out and jumped on these two airplanes, and then they flew away. And the result of that is that Suni Lee, who won the gold medal for best gymnast in the Olympics, was from that culture. She's the granddaughter of the people who he saved. And Debbie and I went to his retirement party, which was held at the Mayflower Hotel about a block from the White House. And the room was filled with Hmong in the ballroom at the Mayflower. And they had these statistics, these incredible statistics, like how many Hmong had achieved this, that, and the other thing. The number I remember was, since he saved them, they had 235 PhDs in the Hmong community. And my wife, Debbie, was very active with the Hmong and very close to this man. So therefore we got to go to his retirement dinner. It was very, very moving. And when Suni Lee won that gold medal a few weeks ago, it's just amazingly moving. And Debbie's been in contact with him today about Afghanistan, because back in the day, and okay, here's some irony and some history. Irony is that my first wife was involved with a bunch of expatriate wives in Tokyo who founded Refugees International. They founded Refugees International, including my first wife. And one of the main things that they did was they would hold an annual concert with a famous composer. And one year while we were there, the famous composer was Maxim Shostakovich, the son of the famous composer, and the conductor, and his son, I forget his son's name at the moment, but his son was 18 years old and he was a concert pianist, and they had defected to the West 10 months earlier. Maxim had waited till his son was grown and until he had made his son into a concert pianist, and they had a concert in Hamburg, West Germany, and they did this concert, and then they walked out of the concert hall and into the American embassy and asked for asylum. And so anyway, he came to Tokyo for this concert that Refugees International had organized, and it was just a zoo. He had to have a whole battalion of Japanese police defending him against the Russians and all kinds of stuff. But they had a dinner. We had a dinner, and it was in this Japanese restaurant. So we're all sitting on the floor on this long table. There's I would say there are about 30 of us around the table, and here's Maxim Shostakovich and his son, and he tells the story about escaping, and then one of these sort of junior leaguey women says to him, "Well, Maestro, how does the government teach or treat musicians in Russia?" And Shostakovich says, "Well, in Russia, the government treats the people just like shit." This woman drops her chopsticks. But anyway, then when I separated from my first wife and met Debbie, it turned out that Debbie was also involved with refugees, and she was involved in the Vietnamese boat people, and she had gotten to know these people that I was just describing, and she founded an organization called Refugee Women in Development in the mid-1980s. And the objective was to run it for 3 years and then turn the helm over to a refugee woman to be the chief executive officer. And so during this 3-year period, she did a lot of work with the Hmong in Minneapolis and helped them understand how they could turn their handicrafts into businesses for the people, among other things.
Did she work through microloans with them
Yeah, there was stuff about microloans too, because we ended up with Mohammed Yunus, who was the Nobel Peace Prize winner from Bangladesh, who had developed micro financing. You're right about that. But anyway, she had founded Refugee Women in Development, and when it came time to turn over the helm to a refugee woman, she hired Seema Wali. And Seema Wali, I'm not going to say much about her, but if you look her up, you can find her obituary on Google. It's Sima is her first name, and Wali is her last name. That's the name she went by after she came to the United States. I'm not going to tell you who she was actually, but She was a prominent person in Afghanistan who had escaped by going over the Himalayas. Took her 70 days on foot, on camels. And anyway, so she was there, and Debbie gave her this platform to work from. And if you find her obituary, you won't see anything about refugee women in development, because everything that's discussed in her obituary is after that. But you can see what an amazing woman she truly was. And unfortunately, yesterday we found out that she had died. And so we found her obituary because Debbie wanted to get in touch with her. And then she said to me, well, I'm glad Seema didn't live to see this, what's going on now. But we've had a life, I would say.
You have.
And
You've been a trooper.
huh?
You've been a trooper.
Yeah, and the same man who, so then the man who got the Hmong out had retired from the State Department, and the retirement party we went to was his retirement from the State Department. And so when he retired from the State Department, Debbie got him hired as the president of of Refugees International, which he did for 10 years. And at one point, when the crisis in Rwanda was taking place, he got a call from the White House saying that satellite images said that there were 2 million people on the move in Rwanda. They wanted him to go over there and figure out what was going on.
And point the way. Open.
Well,
Point
I'm
the
not,
way.
I'm not going to say anything more about it than that. Enough said about this stuff, but
It's just everywhere. It doesn't stop.
yeah. So now, so I now have a shirt like this, which says U.S. Embassy, Hanoi, Vietnam. That because Debbie's other counterpart had taken Debbie to the Hanoi Hilton of all things, right? Not the real Hanoi Hilton, but the new Hanoi Hilton where you could actually stay in luxury.
Right.
And because she was the number 2 in the Agency for International Development, she was able to buy something from the store at the embassy. So she brought me this polo shirt, and so people say, "Oh wow, did you get to go to Hanoi?" And I said, "No, I only got the Southern tour."
The Southern tour.
Or actually, I wanted to study Asia after I graduated from college. And while I was in college, I was doing that too, of course, because I had been in Japan in high school. And so the way I put it is, well, I got the boys' graduate school for Southeast Asia, and Debbie got the girls, which was to go to get a master's degree at the East-West Center at the University of Hawaii. And so she got the girls' tour and I got the boys' tour. But,
Which island in Hawaii?
Huh?
Which island?
In Oahu. It's
Oahu. We love Oahu.
Yeah, it's
Beautiful.
the Manoa
Yeah.
campus of the University of Hawaii.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
There's a special section there, a separate section for the East-West Center. You can look it up.
Yeah, it's a very peculiar place, full of Japanese and this and that. This is very
Well,
peculiar.
it's for cross-cultural.
Military people, New
Yeah.
Age, and Japanese, basically.
Yeah, you got it.
It's very eclectic.
Right. And so anyway, the woman that arranged for me to get the shirt is now a candidate to be the president of the East-West Center, interestingly.
Cool.
And so we'll see what happens.
You should, if you have a chance to visit, it would be great for your health.
We have visited. We spent Christmas of 2010 at East-West Center. And it's actually a good deal, which I would highly recommend, which is that they have basically it's a hotel that in off times they rent out to visitors to Hawaii at very low prices. It's a dormitory, so it's not a 5-star hotel, but it's quite decent, and you're right on the campus of the University of Hawaii. So if you ever want to go to Hawaii, you should look into whether you can stay there. And
What is it called? We love Hawaii.
East-West Center.
Uh,
East-West Center.
that's
Yeah,
one
I
of
don't
our
have
favorites.
problems with lower grade rooms typically, because if I'm traveling somewhere, if I'm in my room all the time, I shouldn't have gone there.
That's right. Well, and it's it's like 4 blocks from Waikiki, so
Yeah.
like it's not hard.
Right. Yeah.
And so
Did you like Hawaii? Kauai?
I like Hawaii all right. I mean, I'm not wild about it personally, but
Kauai is very nice.
yeah,
It has a lot of really mystical temples and different temples going on.
I know some very nice people from Kauai actually who were in language school with me
It's a much smaller kind of thing.
In the late 60s.
I had deja vu when I got off the airport in Hawaii. The smell. You get off and then you walk through corridors, open air, unlike any other.
Yeah.
So it smelled, to me, it smelled like Cuba. It's like, it's got that same foliage and whatever else. And it's like,
Yeah.
it
And
has just
and there's
nature.
and the military owns a hotel there that's like a Hilton. It's not a Hilton, but it's I forget what it's called, Mauna Kea or something like that, but it's right on Waikiki. And so because I still have an ID card, we can, and Debbie has one too, so we can go there. And we had our Christmas dinner there with a bunch of troops.
I'm a swimmer, so we love the ocean. And I would go every single day.
Yeah, sure, we did every single day. And
swim for hours.
So we have dear friends there, and some of them because Joss Sangalang, who is the psychiatrist that comes on to the Wisdom Path often. Joss used to live here.
Yeah.
And she and her husband were quite close to us for, I don't know, about a decade. And then they broke up. And so Joss went back to Hawaii. And Deb's been out to see her a couple of times since then. And I did once. We saw Joss and her mother in Hawaii in 2010.
It's a very particular feeling of this small island in the middle of such vast ocean. I
Yeah.
mean, it's so far away from anything and everything that
Yeah, you tend to get a little islanditis there.
it inspires this.
Yeah, I had another experience with Hawaii, which was when I was in my when I was a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps Reserve. At the end of the fiscal year, which is at the end of September, sometimes departments have extra money left over in their budget and they want to spend it because they don't want to have to give it back and tell the bosses that they didn't need it. So
Because their budget next year will be smaller.
right, or otherwise their budget would be smaller next year,
Yeah.
right? So I get this call about the 20th of September one year. I forget what year. Must have been like 87 or 88. And they called me up and say, well, Colonel Conover, we'd like you to go visit our facility at Kaneohe on Oahu because we want how do you spend money fast? Well, you send a lieutenant colonel across on a 9-hour flight or 10-hour flight to Honolulu and have him stay there for 5 days. So you have to pay his salary for 5 days and all that stuff. So, I got a free trip to Hawaii out of that deal. That's one of my experiences in Hawaii. It was kind of lonely, but because Deb wasn't with me on that trip, but it was an experience. So I've had a few, as you have gathered. Anyway, I'll see you all on Wednesday, I hope. And thank you, Raquel, for doing it.
Yeah, it was lovely, Raquel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was the
Beautiful
wonderful
presentation.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
I'm feeling
Yeah.
challenged now for next week. Oh.
I gotta buy.
Yeah, and
I gotta buy the week after because we'll be moving. So
You'll be moving? What
no,
do
I
you
mean the show. I mean the session.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
so
Are you at
have you found a home yet, Jordan?
The cabin.
You're going to stay in the
Yeah,
cabin?
I see he's at the cabin.
Yeah, I decided to stop doing the first world problem of homeless in a hotel because it started to remind me of the move I had back in Philly with Lyra, my dog, as a restricted breed. It was almost impossible to find a place that would take us. And I was in extended stay America, I think, for 72 days to the $8,360.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I didn't have that going in. And how did I find that? So a month and a half in, I realized I don't want to finish doing that again.
Yeah.
And, any kind of commute in Philly was an hour and a half. It only takes me 50 minutes, cabin to plaza and Taos.
Yeah.
So, and it's no stoplights other than a couple on the front end, a couple on the back end. It's just open mountain country, the mesas and the plains.
It's like a meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I drive the speed limit or right there around, a little bit of granny driving kind of thing in a way. But someone was going from Red River to Taos with me. They're like, can you speed up? I'm like, you need to acclimate. I'm not driving like my normal driving, which would be how many G's can I pull diving into the turn and jetting out. You got to understand, the road doesn't cross the forest, or the forest doesn't cross the road. The road crosses the forest. I'm driving for wildlife, not for split times. So, and that's the thing is, I'll hang out at a slower speed, but it's only 50 minutes. So I decided that. And what's interesting too is that now I'm here at 9,900 feet, and 3-4 days a week I'm going down to Taos, and I get down to Taos and I feel like I'm back at sea level because I found my threshold for altitude was 9,100, but now at 99, I'm hiking every day and acclimated to the air. I mean,
Well, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. It's
You
nice
had a
to-
change. You had a change of heart because I recall you saying, "No, I want to be in town where the
Well,
activity is."
Actually, Gilda, there wasn't a change of heart at all. I've made life-changing decisions multiple times every day for the last 120 days. That's really,
Isn't it okay to have a change of heart?
I don't look at it like that. I just look at it like serendipity and what do I want to do now?
Right.
Because
Well, also with all that time, you can do a hell of a lot of reading.
Yeah,
on
you can hear.
audible.com.
hell, a lot of astro charting on myself. That's what I've been doing.
Yeah, whatever.
You mean you can listen to audio tapes?
Yeah, and actually, Gilda, you're right in terms of the change of heart, except what I think why I took a little issue is I'm avoiding the change of heart.
Oh,
As things move out of resonance, I'm realigning and I'm adjusting, and I'm not making myself stick to some overly planned thing. And the synchronicities are just amazing.
Mhm.
And I think what that's also doing is, I'm sure I'll get back to planning like I used to somewhat, but I don't think I'm through the woods on acclimating to being here yet. And I think it'll
Yeah.
probably take me about a year. And so I figure I'm not going with the flow, because only dead fish go
Yeah.
with the flow.
Yeah, by the way, Raquel, could you send me
that's exciting.
could you
Yeah.
send me a thumbnail that I can use on this video? I'll insert it if you send it to me
Okay,
tomorrow.
okay. I'll make one.
Tomorrow. Yeah. The
Sure.
thumbnail, you could even put your name in it if you want. You
Okay.
know, led by Raquel. You know,
Well,
and you can put your contact information on it if you want.
I do have to say, this happened this morning.
Okay. Oh, that's cool.
Oh,
landed-
Oh,
He was on the deck
wow.
and he landed, turned around. I looked over and noticed him on the railing, and he turned around. And it's cool the way pictures now, they give you the last little motion.
Yeah.
yeah.
But this beautiful butterfly, it's like, this big.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Wow.
Just
That's
right.
a really good
I'm like, that's a good totem right on my foot. So
Yeah.
They're welcoming you.
You could
Yeah.
probably do something with that. So,
yeah.
all right, everyone.
All
Thank you
right.
for being here.
Good night,
I'm
everyone.
gonna
Good
Good night,
night.
everyone.
call this
Thank
a
you for
quit.
everything.
Nice seeing you, Raquel.
Bye-bye.
Save time next June for us.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Okay. Let's see. How do I get out of here?